Amy and I always say you have to put your spouse first, even above your kids. What it means to put your spouse first is that you are going to prioritize time with your spouse, and whether that's 30 minutes or an hour.
Welcome back to the Love Stories podcast. I'm your host, Charlene Byars. I am so excited to welcome my next guest to the show today. Nick and Amy, a husband and wife duo married for 23 years, turned their own struggles with emotional intimacy into a mission to help couples strengthen their marriages. As the creators of the Ultimate Intimacy app, hosts of the Ultimate Intimacy podcast, and founders of the U&I app and Intimate Shop, they provide expert tools, resources, and products to help couples deepen their connection and reignite passion. This was such a powerful conversation about how to create intimacy in your relationship and bring back the playfulness. No matter how long you've been married, there are ways to do it and tools that we can use and start today. So excited for you to hear this conversation. And remember, stick around for the tip of the week at the end of the show. Welcome to Love Stories, a relationship podcast for successful women, where we talk about love, dating, relationships, and how great love stories are made. I'm Charlene Byars, and I'm so excited to share all the things that you can apply to create a beautiful love story of your own. Cheers to great love. Well, hello, Nick and Amy. Oh my goodness. What a treat this is today. I absolutely love interviewing couples because I love to get, the couples, the man and the woman, their input, their perspective on relationships. And I know, especially, the work that you guys are doing. So first of all, I just want to say thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having us. Yeah, we're excited to be here.
So excited.
Yes, so excited. Oh my goodness. And I was thinking about how I wanted to start with you today. And I know that the work that you're doing is a subject that I'm telling you, I mean, me as a relationship coach, I hear it often. I hear that, people really struggle sometimes when it comes to intimacy, or they don't even know what that means, or they might have had it, maybe let's say in the beginning of their relationship, and then life has happened and things have changed, and really coming back to that. So I know this is something that you guys are really specializing in. And first I want to say, oh my goodness, it's so needed. So thank you guys for doing that. Honestly, thank you for doing that. But before we get into that, I wanted to learn a little bit about you two. And it doesn't matter who goes first. It's okay. It's all good. Tell me, how did you guys meet? Let's start there.
Well, there'll be two versions. So it depends on what version you want to hear, and then your audience can decide which version.
The accurate version or the other version?
I want both of the versions. I want to know. Yeah, I want to know what you think how you met and what Amy thinks how you met.
We better let Amy open up about this.
Okay. All right.
Your version first.
All right. So so I was like, 25? We had got set up on a blind date, and I canceled the first time. She canceled the second. I tried to cancel the third. I had never seen her. And we went on the blind date and completely hit it off. And during our blind date, she told me that she was going to get ready to move to California. And I'm like, what? What am I wasting my time for on this blind date if you're moving? So 3.5 weeks later, I asked her to marry me because I'm like, I can't let her go. And she must have been, partially asleep or something, because miraculously she said yes. And we've been married 23 years since. So if our kids ever ask us how long we dated, we say, oh, it was so long, it was 3. And we just leave it at that. So.
Oh my goodness, I had no idea. This is going to be good, you guys. This is going to be good. Okay, Miss Amy, what do you got? How did you guys meet?
He did pretty good. I would have to say that I don't remember ever canceling on him. I think he added that part, and I don't think he was going to cancel the third time. I just remember getting set up on a blind date and it going fantastic. And he says We got engaged 3.5 weeks. It was actually literally 21 days, exactly 3 weeks. I know it's only 3-day difference.
I was rounding up. I was rounding up to 3.5 versus, yeah. So.
The point is that we've been at 23 years with 4 kids, and there had been many of times where our marriage could have fallen apart, but we have decided to stay committed, and it takes effort, and it takes work, and it takes commitment, and here we are. So we have quite a story.
Well, I think part of that is we didn't have the tools that we needed, and so we learned a lot of things on the way, and so that's why we're on a mission to do what we are doing now, is because if we would have had those tools, it probably would have made a lot of things a lot easier. Having said that, I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change the trials or the hardships we went through, because that's made us who we are today. And I think our marriage is stronger because of it. Don't ask her if she feels the same way. But anyways, yeah.
Okay, now that is, oh my goodness, you guys. No, seriously, because we hear about, when people get together and you take your time, and usually, the courtship's a little longer. I mean, this was pretty quick. Okay, but you know what? It's all right. Let's go here. Let me ask you this. Amy, what was your first impression of him when you first met him?
Oh, let's hear this.
My first impression was he was super good looking, but after an hour conversation with him, I was like, he is a genuinely good guy. Like when you can feel it, like when you can feel it. So like deep down in his soul, he is a good Christ-like man. That was it for me.
So I love that you're saying that, because often I tell women, I'm like, listen, sometimes if you allow yourself to really step into your intuition and feel how you feel when you're around that person, you can get, we don't really know anybody until time goes by. I understand that. But in the beginning, you can, if you trust yourself, you can get a certain sense. So from the beginning, you can already sense that he was a good man. He was a good guy.
Very good guy.
Yeah,
I feel it, which is why we moved so quick. Yeah.
Okay. What about you? What was your first impression of Miss Amy?
Oh, obviously, she was beautiful. The conversation just went amazing, and obviously, we both dated a ton. I was almost 26. One of the things I kind of learned is like someone for a couple of weeks, and then it would kind of be just like, this isn't right. And for whatever reason, I just felt totally different with her than I'd ever felt with anyone else. I knew I was probably crazy to ask her after 3.5 weeks, but honestly, there was no doubt in my mind, like this is a woman I want to spend forever with. And so yeah, I just kind of had that feeling and that confirmation, and there was no doubt whatsoever, like there was previously.
No, Nick, that clarity, and you could speak on this with men, and this is what I hear, and I just want to know what your guys' opinion on this. When it comes to, the matters of the heart, I hear men often, they would say to me, they're like, Charlene, I knew pretty early on, like who my woman, I wanted to be my woman, who I wanted to be with. And women will say, it took me, I did, but it took me a little more time to warm up to that. Do you think there's some truth in that? Because like you just said, you knew pretty much early on, this is the one. This is the one for me.
Yeah, I think there's probably some truth in that. I don't have anything to necessarily back it up, but I think Amy and I talk about this all the time, and hopefully I'm not out of place, but I think men for the most part are pretty simple, right? We're kind of right to the point. We're pretty simple. We don't use as much like emotion and feelings in a lot of our decisions, where women tend to often have a lot more emotions and a lot more feelings and things like that. And by the way, that's a great thing. But I think a lot of times we as men are more simple, and women think about things a lot more. And that's maybe one of the reasons why.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay. So let's talk about this for a second. So you two, wow, what a story here. So Mr. Nick is like 3 weeks, or she says, 20, what did you say, 21 days?
21 days, somewhere in that area.
Well, no. She's like, no, it's 21 days. I'm just saying, right now. She knows. Okay. Amy, what was that like for you when you had, you like you said, you meet this man, you ready,
instantly thought, okay, this is a good guy, but of course you're not really knowing him yet, but you had a good feeling about him, which is really important. And he was, hot, good looking man. You're like, okay, what was it like for you when he proposed or said, I want to marry you in 21 days?
Honestly, I felt the exact same way.
You were like,
It was 100% mutual on both of ours. It just turned into a conversation, and we just looked at each other and like, yes, like, let's do this. Let's do it.
let's do it.
And we had no idea what we were doing. I'm not going to lie. We had no freaking clue what we were doing. And, years into marriage, we looked at each other like, wow, we had no idea what we were doing.
And actually, our first couple of years of marriage were fairly easy. We hear a lot of people say that, the first couple of years are really rough. But for us,
But that's because we were still dating.
correct, yeah.
That's true. Okay, so you proposed to her in 3 weeks, and then how long did it actually take for you two to actually get married?
Probably 4 months.
4 months total. We were married 3 months later. So,
All right.
from dating to married was 4 months.
So I'm assuming you didn't move, or did you?
What's that?
Amy, I'm assuming. Remember, Amy was planning on moving.
Oh, yes. Yes. She did not move. We
Okay. You guys ended up staying. Okay, so now, let's fast forward here. So you guys are getting to know each other. You both had this really amazing feeling that, he's the one, she's the one. I love it. Okay. And then we get married pretty, quick, 4 months. And now we are married. And for the first 2 years, like you guys just explained, things were good. Like you guys had a good flow to things.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was literally our 2 years of dating, like, which most people usually date for that long. Like, we were just having fun, right? Like, there no kids yet, no trials really had hit us yet. Like, it was just a really fun time.
It was a really fun time. Okay. And how long into the marriage when you guys had your first child?
About that 2-year mark.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now the baby comes. And what'd you guys end up having first, a boy or a girl?
We have a boy first.
You have a boy. Okay. How many children do you guys have total?
We have
4 kids. Oh, I got 4 too. And 2 bonus. I have 4 and then 2 bonuses. Okay. Amy. Okay. So Amy, so now you guys are in this relationship, like you said, things are pretty good. You're thinking, wow, marriage is not hard at all, pretty much. It's like being with my best friend. It's like being with my elder.
For sure.
Okay. And so then we have a baby, and what starts changing? I mean, did things change after the baby, or what happened? What happened here?
Well, I think
I don't think the having a baby changed it.
Correct.
We had other stuff going on that kind of took our marriage for a turn.
Yeah. So really quick, I think a lot of couples, we talk about this all the time, how a lot of couples grow up with different perceptions, different experiences, things like that. So growing up, my dad would constantly tell me, don't work for someone, own your own business.
Okay.
And Amy's family was the complete opposite, where the harder you work, the more money you make. And so we kind of got to a point to where, and we hadn't really talked about that before.
We had, and I had my own business during college anyways. So like, I understood that mindset, but I was under the impression that a man does whatever he can to feed his family. And so, yeah, keep going.
Yeah. So make a long story short, what I was doing when we were first married, I decided to go a different direction. It just didn't feel like that was the career path I was supposed to choose. Right. And so for the next the next several years, I was trying to build a business, and wasn't really bringing in any income, and I was just putting everything into that. That kind of became my life. And I can honestly say that I started putting that before our marriage, because as a man, I felt like I got to provide, this is my responsibility. And I think the deeper I got into it, the more pressure I felt to, okay, this has to pay off. I'm in too deep now. So a lot of our issues were more financial, to where I was so driven on what I wanted to accomplish business wise, that I definitely neglected our marriage. I neglected the responsibility to provide, so to speak. In my eyes, I thought I was providing, but I wasn't, right? And so that's kind of what caused us to start going down that path. And we also really lacked a lot of the tools necessary with communication and things like that. So that's kind of getting us into that part. So
Yeah. And did this start, like, you going that route and then also her having, the baby, was that kind of the same time or was it,
Yeah, but I don't
the
think it had anything to do with the having
the baby? Yeah,
on
the
it.
baby. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just speaking for myself. I just knew, me as a mother, I knew when there was so many changes in my relationship, when I had a child. I just felt for me, there was different things that I started realizing that I needed. I mean, I had no idea either. I had no idea. So that was just my perspective. But for you guys, when you guys had your first child, that wasn't really what was going on. That was pretty cool in that sense. It was you and your career. And what was that like for you, Amy?
It was tough. Okay, sometimes the baby didn't really have anything to do with that. I think the reason he had chose to go another direction is though because we had a child and we were going to have children. So there's a lot of pressure on a man in that area, right? So that is kind of what started it. But for me, like once you start having a child, that protective mothering, nurturing comes out, and you're like, man, we have a child. It's not just me and you anymore. Like we have a child support, right? And we ended up having 4 kids in 8 years. So those, like in that time frame as a mom, and I had stopped working because I wanted to be at home for the kids because they were little. And that was really, really hard because like he said, I already had this totally different background where I'm like, well, you go out and work and you provide and you make money for the family. And that was not happening in this situation. So we're having this emotional and communication disconnect during this time because he thinks what he's doing, it's going to pay off. And it was great. He had great motives. But the time I'm thinking like, I came from this isn't okay. And it just really started to divide us.
Yeah. Yeah, for
I
sure.
can see that. And again, you guys being a young couple, having, this transition, having your first child, and him also as a man. And I see that. I hear this often. It just puts such a different responsibility on him. And I can imagine, I mean, Nick, were you thinking, okay, like you said earlier, oh my goodness, it's not just her and I anymore. Now we have a child. I have to be able to provide. And is that when it comes to, the way a man processes overall, we're just talking in generalization. What happens? What happened there? Was it a...
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it was pretty tough. So backing up just a hair, I think this is important to state. So we're religious people. So in that decision, I went to the Lord and I said, hey, this has been my career up to this point. I was very good at what I did and I had the potential to make a lot of money, but it wasn't a real family oriented career. And so when I prayed about it, I got the strongest feeling I've ever had that this wasn't what I was supposed to do. And it was really difficult for me, but I also, when the Lord tells you to do something, you listen. And so I walked away from that thinking, okay, I got an answer. I'm listening to him. Everything's going to go smooth because I'm listening to him and doing what's right. When in reality, oftentimes when we do listen to him, we're probably going to go through some difficult times. Our faith is going to be tested, so to speak. And so for me, walking away from it, I felt really good walking away from it because I felt like that was the right thing to do. And so when things didn't pay off and we kind of struggled through things, that was very frustrating. It was very hard on my self-esteem and like, hey, wait a sec, I'm supposed to provide. Why am I not being able to provide? I did what you wanted, right? But again, I think we have a hard time looking into the future and seeing what the purpose is or what we need to learn or what is in store. And so I feel like a lot of the things we lacked, a lot of the tools we lacked communication, and there were some times ahead that we learned those lessons. And I feel like we really, what's the word I'm trying to say? Really were blessed. Really were blessed, so to speak, by what we went through. Now, having said that, I would never want to go back through what we went through. I would never wish on anyone else. But I do feel like it was a blessing.
It was a blessing. Amy, so during that time, what was it like for you, hon? What was that like for you?
I had my 4th baby. She was 1 year old. So I've got 4 kids under 8. And money is not coming in. So we're going into debt every month. So I'm looking at this as like, wake up, like, look what's happening, right? And he's not getting it. And so I decided when my youngest turned 1, I need to start my own business. So I started my own graphic design business. That's what I do. And it took off. It was such a blessing, but it took off. And all of a sudden I go from, 4 little kids, just have a child, another child, 4th child, to all of a sudden I'm working full time. And that was a huge blessing. Don't get me wrong. That's a huge blessing. Our lifestyle changed completely. But then the next year after year after year, I'm carrying the financial weight. I'm still the nurturer. He's still kind of working full time on his stuff. So he's not really around much. So I'm pretty much doing everything. And so that it switched on me. It went from full-time mom and stress of how we can take care of this family to now everything, including the nurturing and running the house and the chores and the meals and the kids. Now I'm running this business from home full-time, and it's taken me full-time work every single day. So I turned into I don't want to say a stress mess, but just, I was a mess. I did not feel like my needs were taken care of or being listened to. And I got to a breaking point where I'm like, I know you guys have had people on your podcast talking about like the feminine and the masculine role.
Yep.
I'm taking on both of those at this marriage. So now it's starting to wreck me, right? Like I'm doing your job and I'm doing my job, and that doesn't work in marriage. And that's where things started getting really bad. This was about year 12 to 15, somewhere in there.
Wow, well, 12 or 15. Okay, so
We're talking like a couple years after getting married, having kids for 8 years. And then this is going really south, like year like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, like the hard years, right? Like he's still working so hard on his stuff, but now I've got all this stuff on my plate. So you can imagine like I don't know, when a wife gets thrown into the masculine and she starts losing the feminine, but she still has to hold on to the feminine because she's raising the babies, it's just it. And your communication's off and the emotional intimacy is off. Like it's just, that's a breaking point for us. That was kind of like, I don't know if I can do this anymore situation.
And in between, while I'm trying to build that business, I'm trying to do other things as well. Like, get my real estate license or try to do this, and nothing's paying off, right? Nothing's covering it so that she can, scale back on what she's doing as well. So that pressure as well on everything I'm trying to do, in addition to trying to build this business, like nothing seems to be happening. So
okay, this is good. This is really good, because I think so many of us that are in relationships, truly, the love can be there, right? The love's there, but the love is not what's going to sustain a long-term, healthy, loving, connective relationship.
Right.
And I can see often two people, what happens in relationships, it's like you can't see what you can't see necessarily. And I bet you when you guys were in it, I'm sure you had good intentions, you had, your heart was in the right place, but you can't see the bubble you're in. You can't see the, bubble. You could feel it. You could feel it. But people, don't realize that will obviously play such a toll in a relationship when you have two of you, kind of going the opposite ways. And, you're over here trying to do your thing. He's over here trying to do his thing. And then as a woman, yes, having to hold that space in, like she said, in the masculine space and the feminine space, I can only imagine how draining that was for you. You're probably, seriously, I'm just going to say this and you tell me, on autopilot, like just trying to, okay. So now you two, are realizing the years are going by, and both of you, again, your hearts are there. You guys are really honestly at the time doing the best you can for what you knew, because we're not taught relationships for the most part. We're not taught communication, and you guys met, and boom, and fell in love and got together really quick, and then life started happening. I got that. That makes sense. What started happening with you two in the relationship? What started affecting the actual relationship?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, I was just going to say, I think this jumps into where we start figuring things out and communicating. And
so I'll tell you exactly what happened. What happened is I was committed to the marriage, like 100%. So I knew he felt loved. by being intimate, his physical touch, love language. Like I never cut that off, even when I was completely frustrated, right? Like at the lowest of lows, I never cut that off because I knew that was going to be the cement that held us together, is to keep the sexual intimacy alive in our relationship. But what happened is it started becoming more, like you just said, like more that routine. I'm just kind of going through the motions, right? And that is not fun. That is not what I signed up for. In marriage
Well, I was just gonna say, Amy, how did you have the energy?
I don't know. That's one of those things you look back in your life, you're like, I'm glad I made it through that, but it wasn't fun. and I've always had a really strong, healthy sexual desire, and we've had a good relationship in that way. So I'm like, it's supposed to be fun. Like I signed up for fun. I signed up for passion. And when this emotional connection is getting taken away or destroyed in a relationship, it's just not the same anymore. And I think we know that as women, that like we don't want sex if it feels like a chore. We only want to be intimate when it feels intimate, right? Like we want it to be emotionally connecting first, and I wasn't feeling that. So this is where our story kind of began. Year 15 or something. I brought him a bedroom game. It was an appropriate one. I said, I need something new. I feel like I'm broken. What happened in our marriage, it wasn't that like weeks later, after deep diving into why I bought this and what I was feeling, I kind of offended him at first, but
Yeah.
it was like ripping off a Band-Aid, and I'm like, I think I'm broken. Like I don't want to be intimate anymore. Like I don't feel anything anymore. And it's because the emotional connection was literally messed up, disconnected. And so doing that made us start diving into conversations that we had not had. And it wasn't sexual conversations. It was emotional conversations. I'm missing this.
Wow.
I'm missing this. I'm missing the connection. I'm missing you listening to me. I don't feel the trust. I don't feel the security. Those are the things that women need in order to want to be intimate, right?
We kind of did it backwards. Usually people need to get the emotional part first, and then the sexual intimacy, the desire will be there. We kind of did it the opposite. When she bought the bedroom game, it prompted us to start talking about sex, right? I'm like, oh, why did you buy a game? What's wrong with this? Or am I not good enough? Or, a myriad of different things. I was crazy. I thought about that for a day, and I'm like, what husband wouldn't want his wife to buy him a bedroom game? Like, what's wrong with me? So,
No, but seriously, so as she's saying, she always made sure, even though she was exhausted, even though, she was doing all her things, she found that as a priority, but it sounds like, Amy, you were, pretty much kind of doing it for him, but you weren't getting obviously what you were needing. You're like, okay, I want to make sure that I have this connection. So of course, next, like I thought we were doing good.
Well, I definitely knew we weren't doing good, but like Amy said, that's probably what held us together, because my love language is physical touch, right? So when Amy and I are intimate, that makes me feel like, oh my heck, she desires me still. She still loves me, right? Mm. And that was probably the only thing, like she said, that kept us together, because every time we were intimate, I'm like, okay, she still loves me. She hasn't given up on me yet. She still desires me, right? Like if she didn't desire me or want me, she wouldn't want to be intimate. So in my mind, okay, there's still a chance, right? Like we're still, even though we're hanging on by a thread, she still loves me because she's being intimate, right? And so whether right or wrong, that's the way I felt. And so the fact that she never cut that off is really, I think, what held us together.
Held you guys
having said that, going back to when she bought the bedroom game, it started getting us to talk about sex, which we never talked about before, right? In detail, or different things. What do you want? Things like that. And what we learned is, if you can talk about sex, you can talk about anything. So the floodgates opened, and we started to be able to talk about everything. Whereas before, it was kind of like, oh, if this is an uncomfortable subject or it's going to cause an argument or whatever, we stay away from it, right? So we were living in this marriage where things weren't getting better, and we were feeling these ways, and we didn't really talk about it. Or at least I would more close up and say, I don't want to talk about it.
But someone didn't want to listen.
Yeah, it was more I would close up and not want to listen. But anyways, so once I think I learned how to communicate a lot better, probably more so me, and we could talk about the sexual intimacy, then it felt like I could really start talking about anything, right? So then
What was it? Yeah, what was it, Nick? Seriously, what was it like for you when when Amy started being a little more vulnerable, started talking about that for you? What was coming up?
Yeah, I think Amy was pretty good about telling me how she felt, but I interpreted it a different way, or I think a lot of the things that was going on, like I said, it kind of came back to, okay, we're hanging on by a thread, but this is going to pay off soon, and so we just need to hang on a little bit longer. We've invested all this. I can't give up now. Just got to get over the finish line. And make a long story short, finally realized that, all right, if I want to save my marriage, I can't continue down this road anymore. And that's another story in itself. But I'll let you pick back up on the story, because you do such a better job explaining it. And
it's
and your perception's definitely
different. Yeah.
different.
Right, different. Yeah, of course.
The
Yeah.
audience probably wants to hear.
Well, the crazy thing is that we come from different backgrounds. So he came from divorced parents that didn't show love and affection, didn't know how to communicate. I came from kind of the opposite. So isn't it interesting? Like when trials hit, you kind of just like go to what you kind of know, right?
Your default. Yep.
Yeah, it's just a total default. And so he was defaulting to what he knew, and it's just it just took ripping that Band-Aid off and be like, we got to talk. And so many couples that we talk to all the time now don't know how to communicate. Like, have you talked about it? Well, I don't know, because she closes up, or he closes up, or he gets upset, or she gets like, it's just, we have to learn how to communicate. So the minute that day happened, we're like, I can't do this anymore. We're at a breaking point. I'm done if things don't change, literally. But I'm committed to you. I've been committed this whole time, but things have to change. And also we started deep diving into these amazing conversations. Like, this is what I need. We learned about the love languages. We've learned about the things that we like kind of think that people already know. And sometimes they don't know. A lot of men, I get hundreds of men emailing us and commenting on our social media like, well, I don't really know what emotional connection is. What do you mean she needs emotional intimacy first? And I'm just like, duh, it's common sense. It's not for a lot of people, because they are coming from a certain background. A lot of men don't know that kindness and listening and respect and showing her love and speaking her love language is what she needs for her to want to be intimate.
Well, and I think, you're exactly right. But I think another thing to point out too is we only know what we know, right? So, for example, for me, like, I feel loved through sexual intimacy. So immediately my mind thinks that, oh, that's probably how she feels loved, right? Because that's all I know. I know how I feel, my emotions, things like that. And so that's why communication is so important, is understanding, and we hear from so many women, oh, all he wants is to have sex. That's all he wants. Mm-hmm. And as a man, I'm like, it is so much more than that. That is the last thing it is. That's how they feel loved. That's how they, feel vulnerable. And I mean, without even getting off on a tangent on that, but I think as men and women talk and start to understand each other and listen and understand why she feels the way she does and how she feels loved and vice versa, then, amazing things can happen. And so once we started learning how to communicate, it's like the floodgates open, and all of a sudden all these things we were learning and tools we were implementing, and it's like our marriage just started changing rapidly.
Yeah. I find it fascinating. No, that's really good you're saying that, because I find it fascinating, and that you have a couple that have love for each other, and like we said, we're not taught certain things, but they can have sex, but they don't talk about it.
Yeah.
They don't talk about, the likes, or what they like, what they don't like. And especially, being open to that. Why do you think is that happening? Is it just because it's not something that for the most part we're taught? Or is it just this vulnerability? Is it because of the safety of it? Because I do believe wholeheartedly, and especially coming, as a woman, that's the fun part. I love to be able to, share what I like, what I don't like, because really, I mean, I'm the only one that knows my body, and I think it's important to be able to do that. But I found myself, also for many, many years too being shy, and I don't know where that's coming from. What are you guys noticing with couples? Where is that coming from?
I think a lot of it comes back to how you were taught, how you were raised, your religious background, a lot of purity culture. I mean, vulnerability. Like you kind of mentioned all of them. For a lot of men, it's like they don't know how to open up. They don't know how to be honest in this area. And a lot of women don't even know their bodies.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't know what I like. How am I supposed to tell him what I like? Right? Like that's really hard to do. And that's if you've never done that in your relationship, it's like, okay, we've been married 5 years or 10 years or 15 for us. Like, how do I tell him how to touch me? How do I just like tell him that? That's so awkward, right? And that's what makes us so hard is that we've let it be awkward. Like it really is like ripping off that Band-Aid. We tell couples like you just got to do it. Like, which is why we designed all the stuff that we have for couples is to rip that off and make it easier. Because the minute you start talking about those things, you look at each other, you're like, why didn't we do that years ago? That was not that hard.
Yeah.
And a guy, like for a wife to tell a husband, I would love you to touch me like that. Husband's like, okay, I would love to. You know what I mean? It's not awkward. It doesn't need to be awkward. And vice versa. Like,
Yeah,
you know what I
exactly.
mean? It's just, I don't know. It's just, I think a lot of women just don't know what they want. They don't know how to tell them, or it's just kind of a scary topic. It's kind of been taboo.
Well, and again, if you could talk about sex, you probably could talk about anything. And
Yeah.
so kind of what we've learned is when we were able to start talking about sex once again, then we were able to have those really tough discussions with everything else. And it was just, that's like I said, when the floodgates really seemed to open is when we could really communicate and really listen, because a lot of times I assumed that I knew how she felt and I was completely wrong and vice versa. And so, being able to clarify and say, is this really what you mean? Am I understanding this correctly? And it's amazing how many couples don't communicate or talk about tough things. I mean, like Amy said, when we get emails, oh man, we're having this issue in our relationship. And the very first thing we ask is, well, have you talked to her about it? Or if you talked to him about it? And 95% of the time, well, no, I'm too scared to, And so, how could your relationship get better if you aren't able to talk about things? And if something is difficult or hard to talk about, that shows
It's even more important.
it's even more
Even more important. Well, I think there's I think there is a misconception of what intimacy is. I want you guys to talk about what intimacy is, because I would say, for the most part, a lot of people would think intimacy is just the physical aspect of, a couple coming together and having sex and okay, we're intimate, we're good. But as you're talking about, and I know why you guys are doing what you're doing, there are so many layers. Talk about, let's talk about that. What real intimacy is in the sense of, when you're in a relationship with one another.
This is the crazy thing is that we do tons of surveys on our social media, right? I have a couple 100,000 followers. And so when we would do a survey, we get a lot of responses. And if we ask the husbands, what is intimacy to you? They go straight physical.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what it is to them. Like she touches me. She wants to make love to me. She's intimate with me. She desires me, right? If you ask a wife what intimacy is, or the women in general, what intimacy is, it is 100% opposite of that. Their mind goes straight to if you spell it out, it's into me, see. Can he see me? Does he feel me? Is he listening to me? Does he care about me? Does she show me love instead of just saying it? That's intimacy. Can he be vulnerable with me? Are we best friends? Am I feeling connected to him? Right? Am I being understood and really, really heard in my marriage? That's intimacy. So isn't it interesting that there's emotional, there's physical, there's sexual, there's all these different areas, but they look sometimes opposite to men and women, but yet we need them all. We both need all of them.
We do.
A man's sexual intimacy is emotional to him.
correct.
It's not just physical and sexual to him. It's emotional. To us, we need the emotional to want the physical and sexual. Like
Absolutely.
we talk about this all the time on our podcast and in our stuff, that like they go hand in hand 100%, but emotional intimacy always comes first, right? It's that
Well,
connection and love and kindness and respect that you feel in the relationship that is 100% needed for a wife. I can't remember the quote, but someone shared once. It's amazing how much a wife spends her energy on checking to see if she's safe. That's not just physically, that's emotionally safe. Like, we think about those things before we even desire to be intimate. We are just different people.
Well,
I think for women, and just real quick, I know for women, I'm speaking, as a woman here. Absolutely. For me to be able to have that type of vulnerability, that type of intimacy, I absolutely need to feel safe. And I think that's such a beautiful discussion, for both parties, because obviously men need a certain thing and women need a certain thing. So Nick, comes up for you when, when us women are saying, what does that mean when we say we want to feel safe?
Yeah. So let me back up just a little bit before I try to answer that question. I think it's important. In a healthy relationship, you see this toxic game happen all the time where, couples slowly divide, and the husband's withholding the emotional intimacy and the wife's withholding the sexual. And it's like, who's going to give in first? Because again, a man is going to be a lot more likely to become vulnerable and provide the emotional intimacy if the sexual intimacy is there. And and vice versa for the wife, right? If the emotional intimacy is there, she's probably going to have more of a desire to be sexually intimate. So it's crazy what happens, and you see this happen in probably most marriages. At some point is where the wife doesn't feel like her emotional needs are met, or she's being listened to, or things like that. So whether consciously or subconsciously, she starts withdrawing and withholding the sexual aspect, and the husband's like, man, like she's not attracted to me. She doesn't want me. Like what's going on? And then he's withholding the sexual intimacy. He's going to absolutely start distancing emotionally, right? And it's not that he purposely is doing that. He just feels rejected and neglected and like he's not loved and wondering what's wrong. And so you see a couple all of a sudden start dividing, and the wife's like, I'm not giving in. He's not meeting my needs. And the husband's like, well, I'm not giving in. She's not meeting my needs. Pretty soon you're just drifting further and further apart until you're like, what in the world is going on? Like we have no relationship really. And so I think that's just something to be conscious of. And it takes a lot of humility and really let your pride down for whether it's the wife to say, hey, let's make love tonight. And she's going to see her husband be a totally different person if she's initiating or does that, and vice versa, right? It takes a lot of humility and letting your pride down for the husband to say, hey, how am I not meeting your needs? What can I do better? How can we be connected? Things like that. So
no, and I think that's really important that you're saying that, because if you find a couple is in that situation, I would think, a lot of couples, obviously, and the longer you've been together, I can really see how this really plays effect, right? But it also comes down to like, what's going to come first, the chicken or the egg?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And right, like, because we were just talking about, if a woman is wanting to have, sexual intercourse with her man, she again needs to feel that safety, that type of connection. And then you were just saying too, if a man keeps getting rejected, then he's going to also start withdrawing. Mm-hmm. So couples that are hearing this right now, and couples that are in this situation, and this is why I'm so excited you guys are on here today. This has been awesome so far. Thank you. But if they're hearing this and they also realize, like we said, in this marriage, the love is there, but maybe they are not the best communicators, and they also are finding themselves in this same spot. What are some ways, they can start shifting? Like how did you guys actually start shifting? I know Amy brought that game in. Okay, I got that, Amy. You were like, yeah. Here you go. But what are actually some ways, to start this conversation? Because if you haven't had this conversation in your relationship prior, this is going to be a little different, being able to, and especially you guys, you know what I'm talking about, especially if we are not. Okay. So what's the take?
Back to my pops first. I think when you're first learning to do this, it's by far the most difficult. And then what happens is you start having those conversations more often. You're like, man, this isn't that difficult. Like we're actually making headway, and actually figuring things out, and it's actually making things get better. And then it becomes easier and easier and easier just the more you start having those conversations. So one of the things we developed on our app, and we're not going to spend all the time talking about this, but we understand how hard it is for couples to ask questions. It's very uncomfortable for me to ask Amy sometimes a certain question like, oh, hey, let's do this in the bedroom or whatever, right? So when you get on the app and the app prompts you to ask questions back and forth to each other, it's no longer that, hey, I'm asking this vulnerable question. And instead of her thinking like, why is he asking this question? What's he been looking at? Or, different things like that. When the app's telling you to ask that question, it takes away a lot of the pressure and worry about rejection or, things like that. And so we have a lot of great conversation starters to do exactly that. Get the conversation going, and it's amazing. I mean, that's probably the biggest feature that people like the most is this conversation starters or the intimate conversation starters, because
they don't know where to start, right?
Yeah,
kind of like that.
We're having these conversations we've never had, and I never knew that they felt this way and things like that. So it's pretty awesome.
I was going to say the exact same thing. I'm like, we literally built the ultimate intimacy app at year 17 of our marriage about. And we're like, we need to put an easy tool in people's hands to help them get through the things that we got through, so they don't have to go through that. Or if they are, let's turn our marriage around right now, because we can say that like you can implement just a few things in your relationship. We were at a full on breaking point. Like, do we keep doing this or are we done? Right. And a lot of people get there.
Yes.
So we can honestly say we're living proof that you can be at the rock bottom, and with a month later, you can be thriving again.
Well,
I love that.
And if you choose to be done, your next relationship's not going to be any different, because you still don't have the tools necessarily to progress and get through your next relationship. So it's not like all of a sudden the grass is greener and like, oh, this isn't working out. We'll try another one.
Right.
If it is those tools that you're lacking, obviously there's other reasons people get divorced, but if it's over those lack of tools to be able to communicate effectively, you've got to learn this now, because if you don't, you're never going to learn it.
Right.
So this doesn't have to take years.
Yeah.
Exactly. We turned our marriage around in weeks. We did 3 things.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did you do?
3 things.
3 things. We started listening to each other. Like really listening. Like, look at each other and hold each other's hands and be like, talk to me. I'm listening. It's like we listen and we don't judge, right? Like, I'm not going to judge. I'm just going to listen to you. I want to understand you. Number 2, we started having conversations that we had never had. So we were talking and we were listening. And the 3rd thing that we did is we started implementing date night again. If you want to turn your marriage around, you got to start having fun again, because we were missing out on the fun. Like, everything was business. Everything was kids. Hold on. Everything was just work related, stress related. Look at the situation we're in. Wow. You know what I mean? Like, you got to start having fun again. You got to go back to, we got to pursue each other. We got to start dating each other again. Like, we got to take it back to the basics, before stress, before problems, before kids. We fell in love for a reason, right?
Yep.
Fell in love for a reason. And how do we get back to that place? Because you can do that over and over and over again, right? Like, no matter how many years you've been married. So we got to date each other. So we implemented date night once a week, whether we could get a babysitter or not. It was intentional time at home or out on the town. We had to start doing fun things together. We had to start talking about each other again. Like, what do you need? What do you want? What are our goals? Like, let's talk about us again. Let's start having fun together. Let's get out of this mindset that like adulthood is boring and stressed out, right? Let's have fun. Let's have fun together. We started having fun together. Within a month of listening to each other and doing fun things again, our relationship completely turned around. The intimate life got better. The emotional connection was stronger. I feel like we went back literally those 15 years and just kind of started from scratch. Like, you can fall back and that's what I want to like get out of this podcast. Like, no matter where you're in your relationship, you can totally turn it around. We see couples if you're both willing. We see couples turn around their marriages or their relationships all the time, just from implementing a couple little simple tools of listening and caring and talking and having fun again. We really do.
Well, and 100% of the time, 100%, when we ask couples that contact us that are struggling, first thing we ask is, are you having date nights? And 100% of the time it's like, no, we don't go on dates. And
Why, Nick? Why do you find why is that? What's happening? Why are we not going on dates anymore?
think about how powerful date night is, right? Okay. So we're sitting here talking about communication. When you go on it, you fell in love dating each other because you were spending time together, you were getting to know each other, you were talking, you were being together romantically, you were having fun. Everything that causes a relationship to fall in love is pretty much happening when you're dating each other. So why do so many married couples stop dating each other? So for us, like, we were not dating each other. So when we started implementing date night, like, of course, we started having deep conversations because we're not interrupted with kids and we're focused on each other and things like that. And so we really feel like date night completely changed our marriage because everything we're talking about kind of falls under having date night with that good communication and things like that. So you were going to say...
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think we as moms, we're like, oh, our kids have something, or I'm too tired to really put the energy in that, or maybe we don't have the money. You know what? Date night is about just being intentional. It's not about you have to go to dinner and a movie every week. It's not what date night is. We hear from tons of couples. They're like, we have little kids. Like, we don't have family in town. We don't have babysitters. We don't have people we can trust. You could put your kids to bed and have an intentional date night right at home.
Instead of sitting on the couch on your phone.
I mean, yeah, that's what most couples do. They go to their phone or they go to Netflix, right? They're just like kind of checked out. Like, it's about being intentional. There are tons of ideas. We have tons of ideas on the app that can help you have fun, passionate date nights at home. Play a game together. Get out the board games. Like, cook something. Like, there's so many different ideas. And the second thing that fixes that, if you do at-home dates, is you don't have to have a bunch of money. You don't have to pay a babysitter. Like, it's all about intention. So we have to shift our mindset to think, okay, how can we just have fun together? That's really what date night is. It's not about leaving.
Yeah.
No, I love that because when just hearing you two talk, I mean, date night is just coming back to that friendship again, that connection. Like, I love hanging out with you. You love hanging out with me. Let's just talk. Let's have fun. Let's explore something different. That to me is exactly what brought, you two together, brought me and my husband together from the begining.
Right.
Is that exploration. It's that connection, is really just loving to hang out with each other.
Yeah.
And having that space. And I think when it comes to marriages, and again, you guys, for the most part, this is so many of us. I mean, again, we just don't understand this. And then, but I love that Amy said, this is something that you can apply. You guys, so if you're listening to this today, look how amazing and how authenticity Amy is talking about. Like, you can actually change things up, and it doesn't have to take. So if you haven't been having date night for a while, that's okay. You can start tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think one more thing to point out, and this is very controversial,
okay,
because people take it the wrong way, but a lot of the reason we hear for so many women is, well, we don't have time for date night because of the kids and things like that. Amy and I always say you have to put your spouse first, even above your kids. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't spend 8 hours of that day with your kids and 1 hour with your spouse. You can still put your spouse first and spend 30 minutes with them and 8 hours with the kids. What it means to put your spouse first is that you are going to prioritize time with your spouse. And whether that's 30 minutes or an hour, whatever you determine as a couple that you need during that day, it doesn't mean you neglect the kids and you're leaving them home alone and things like that. Putting your marriage first before your kids means that you are going to take X amount of time per day or per week and spend that time together, and nothing's going to get in the way of it. So I just wanted to point that out.
That's important, Nick.
It's such a simple thing too, because if you put your marriage first, your kids are going to see that. Your kids are going to see how important that relationship is between, a husband and wife, and they're going to want to emulate that. And so I can't stress that enough.
I agree.
No, that's beautiful, because the foundation, Nick, that's so good you said that, because the foundation, when you are putting your marriage first, yes, life gets busy and you got to do all the other things. But when you take that time and prioritize that, this is a reality. I remember I said earlier on, I'm a mother of 4. My children are older, you guys. My oldest is 32 and they leave. It's just a short amount of time. It really is just a short amount of time. And if you're not already setting that tone for the relationship for you two, I mean, when they leave, you're going to both be looking at each other like, okay, now what? You're like, hi, who are you? Who are you? Because that's the beauty of relationships. A healthy relationship should be able to grow and learn and continue on. I love what you guys say, continue on dating one another. Honestly, put that priority in each other because that is where the meat is at. That's where the meat is at. Amy, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that isn't it interesting that if you look at your screen time, you might have hours. Who knows? But if you have 30 minutes screen time every day, you have time for your spouse. Yeah. It's just that simple. And we all do. We all have a screen time. So we all have time for our spouse. We do. There's no excuses.
There's no excuse. And I know that, okay, I've said this before in this podcast, and I'm really going to say this right now. Where does this time go? I know you two have a hard stop at 2. And I'm like, I just started with you guys. But I just want to say, you guys, honestly, get into Amy and Nick's world. Can you guys talk just a little bit about, before we get off of this podcast, I know you have a hard stop. I hope you just have a few minutes. Okay, how they can get in your world. And can you talk a little more about that app and how they can get a hold of this app? Because, Nick, when you were saying that it gives you those prompts, for people that are listening right now and they're like, okay, we need to change things up in our relationship. And I don't even know where to start. I don't even know what questions to ask. We've never even gone there. We've never gone, to that level. How can they get a hold of this app? How can they get a hold of your world?
Yeah. So first off, the app covers every aspect of sexual intimacy, emotional intimacy, spiritual intimacy, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a safe place where Christians can go. They don't have to worry about what they're going to see, that they can go get the tools, but also have the fun that they want to have, spice things up in their relationships. So our app is called the Ultimate Intimacy app. It's helped almost 1 million people so far. And like I said, we call it ultimate intimacy because when you truly have or find ultimate intimacy, there's nothing better. It's a constant journey to get there. But when, like I said, when everything's kind of clicking on all cylinders, there's nothing better in the world than that. So you can go to ultimateintimacy.com. And like I said, we have a podcast, products, videos. The app's free to download. You can also pay for an upgraded version. And it's just it's helped so many couples. I think we have a 4.9 out of 5-star rating on Apple, which is almost unheard of, with thousands of ratings and reviews. So it is a really good resource to help couples. So go check it out.
And we just launched a brand new app called You and I, barely launched. And this is like
yesterday.
Yesterday, yes.
This is like kind of our part 2 to Ultimate Intimacy, but it has different features. And like we were talking about, the intimate conversations has cards where you can sync with your spouse, have these conversations. It's supposed to make it easier. We call all the things in our apps that we want you to have that have helped us. We have a date night timeline for the whole year. You can customize it, kind of journal your dates, add photos. Harmony home section, so you can be communicating about the things while you're raising your kids. Make sure you're on the same page so that emotional intimacy is super strong. Both apps, amazing. You can find our new one at You and I app, youandiapp.com. And yeah.
And reach out to us if you have any questions. You can reach out to us directly. Either Amy and I answer them directly at amy@ultimateintimacy.com, Amy, AMY at ultimateintimacy.com. And we're here to answer any questions you have. So
seriously, I wish I was there with you two right now. But I just want to give you guys just like the biggest bear hug. Honestly, what an amazing tool that you guys have created. And actually, it's giving me goosebumps. I'm actually like seriously, it's giving me goosebumps to give couples that. And you guys, listen. It doesn't matter if you are newlyweds. It doesn't matter if you've been married and you're like, oh, we've been doing this for a long time. No, it doesn't matter. This is such a beautiful tool to change things up, to have those deeper conversations, to be able to connect in a way that maybe you haven't connected before. And maybe if you did, now have a different way to connect again. You guys, that is honestly one of the coolest things I've ever heard. No,
No, we just really want couples to have ultimate intimacy, all the areas of intimacy. You have to have all the areas to thrive, right? We just want you to all find ultimate intimacy. We worked with experts on these apps, and we just want tools to make it easier on you, because it's not hard to turn your marriage around. It's not.
Yeah, it was one of those things, like, honestly, like, we just saw how much it completely changed our marriage. And we're like, there's got to be other people out there that are feeling the same way we are, that want a safe place to be able to go talk about sex, talk about all these different things, rather than going and doing a search and worrying about what you're going to see. So,
And I have 2 mottos. Can I share them really quick?
yes, I can figure out a day, but I know you have the hard stop. Yeah, you go, Amy.
Okay. My first motto is that marriage should never be mediocre. I truly believe that. Like, I truly believe that it should be passionate, and it should be romantic, and it should be fun. Like, we did not get married to just have a boring marriage. It should never be mediocre. It should be passionate.
Amen.
Motto. My second one is, if you're going to be on your phone, which we all are, we're all addicted, you might as well be strengthening your marriage. That's why we created our apps, is because you could be on your phone, you could be strengthening your marriage at the same time.
Oh my goodness.
Having fun.
That mic drop. That is fantastic. No, I'm not even kidding you. I'm actually so excited to get this app, because it is the coolest tool I've ever heard of. I'm not even kidding you. One of the coolest tools. I never heard that. You hear about games and stuff like that, but the simplicity of that, you can just grab your phone and you guys can just off to the races. That is amazing. No, I know I'm going to let you two go. Please come back. Seriously, come back. This went too fast. My podcast needs to be longer. There's just so much, right? There's just so many nuggets here.
for sure.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it just went so fast. Is there anything else that's on your heart that you guys want to share before we get off the podcast?
Yeah, just like I said, we're really passionate. We truly want to see people have great marriages, because when you do have a great marriage, there really is nothing better. And I think when people are in a really dark place, as long as their marriage is healthy and respectful, no matter what point they're at, it can turn around a lot quicker than they think. I think people often feel like, oh man, it's like climbing Mount Everest. We can't do it, right? There's no hope. That is not true at all. Like, your marriage can get turned around very, very quickly if you're in a loving, healthy relationship, right?
Right.
And so just to let people know, like, there is hope, and it can turn around quickly just by having the right tools, just like our relationship did. I mean, we went from talking about divorce to now I couldn't be happier. I'm more in love with her than I ever have been, and I couldn't be happier in our relationship. And when you find good news, you want to share it with others. So
Right.
That's beautiful, you guys. No, see, that's beautiful. And and even if you've been married for a long time and you've been doing things a certain time or a certain way, right? A certain way, you could change it up.
yeah.
You can change it up. You can absolutely change it up. This app is for you too. This app is for you too. Okay, you guys, thank you so much for this incredible conversation. Thank you. Seriously, I'm just such a fan. I just honestly, big bear hug. I'm not even kidding you. And until next time, cheers to great love.
Let's talk about the tip of the week, which is rebuilding emotional intimacy through micro moments. Marriages can go through waves, and sometimes we can feel disconnected with each other. And if you love your spouse and you are feeling disconnected, the key isn't just grand gestures. It's small daily moments of connection. Small moments actually create deep love. Here are some things that you can do to start creating connection back with your partner again. 1, the power of hugging. I call it the 30-second power hug. Hug each other daily for at least 30 seconds, and that will release oxytocin, which is a bonding hormone that is released with physical contact. It is so powerful. 2, while talking to each other, hold intentional eye contact. actually look into each other's eyes. There is something very powerful that happens when you take 10 to 15 seconds to reconnect and look into each other's eyes. 3, daily appreciation. Share something you admire about your spouse. Pour into them. Appreciation truly goes a long way and it allows your person to feel that connection and a validation from you. 4, take 10 minutes a day just to share. I call it the heart share. Talk about your feelings, things that you're looking forward to, not the logistics. Talk about the things that you are feeling and that are on your heart. And 5, last but not least, and it's so important, is being playful and flirty. A little teasing, a smile, or a text can reignite the spark. Be intentional and keep things light and fun. Sometimes we get too serious about life and we need to bring back the playfulness. Start there because small amounts truly create deep love and you can start today. And remember, don't forget to check out the Ultimate Intimacy app from Nick and Amy. That's a wrap. That was such a treat interviewing Nick and Amy and how they shared their love story. And although you can have love for one another, it takes intention and action to keep the intimacy alive. And if you haven't had that for a while, there are ways to bring back the spice between the two of you and have it be exciting again. That's why they created the Ultimate Intimacy app as a tool to help you along the way. Wow, so awesome and so inspiring for all of us. Thank you, Nick and Amy. If you're loving this podcast and these incredible conversations, please hit the subscribe button and leave a 5-star review. Don't miss an episode because each week I'll be bringing on guests and experts who will share their knowledge about love, dating, and relationships so you can apply it into your own life. I'll see you next week. And until then, cheers to great love.